Hello there, welcome to Planet America. I'm John Barron.
And I'm Chaz Lecciardello.
This week, devastating polls for Joe Biden. Some Democrats are now calling for him to think again about running in 2024.
And our guest is Republican campaign legend Stuart Stevens, who's quit the grand old party. Does he think Biden can stop Trump? Let's find out, but first...
I'm an innocent man, I'm an innocent person.
Yes, it's a thrilling real-life courtroom drama starring America's 45th president.
I don't know what I said. I don't remember.
Oops, wrong clip. Here it is.
I think it went very well. I think you were there and you listened and you see what a scam this is.
And this little melodrama also stars another person named Donald Trump.
I can look at the crime stats in New York and think there's probably other people they could focus on.
Featuring a guest appearance from somebody who doesn't understand why he didn't get to be named Donald Trump too.
The state is absolutely going to hell, and it's because of people like the Attorney General of New York.
It's probably a good thing they don't seem to like New York anymore, because chances are they'll be barred from doing business there ever again.
This holds up on appeal. This could mean he loses buildings. It means he loses properties.
We will see the removal of Trump's name from some of the most iconic buildings in New York City.
The judge in this civil case, Arthur Engeron, has already found the three Trumps liable for fraud, overestimating the value of various assets to secure cheaper loans from banks.
For example, Trump's apartment at Trump Tower is 10,990 square feet, but he claimed it was 3 times larger, at 30,000 square feet. He said his apartment was worth $327 million, when according to court documents, the true value is $114 million.
As well as being banned from doing business in New York, the Trumps face a possible fine of $250 million. With so much at stake, you might expect Trump to be contrite when he took the witness stand for 4 hours yesterday, but no. There were no cameras or audio allowed in court, so we'll have to recreate this for you from transcripts with John DiDomenico as Trump, even though he's got a little bit of laryngitis. And Chaz, we'll get you to be Judge Engeron. Now, first, Trump described the judge's earlier ruling that he committed fraud as...
very stupid. It's a terrible thing you've done. You know nothing about me.
Trump's defence relies heavily on a disclaimer that he had inserted into contracts to secure the loans.
We have a disclaimer clause that says, do your own due diligence. Don't under any circumstance count on anything here.
The judge has already ruled that disclaimer clause was not some magic get-out-of-jail-free card. If fraud was knowingly committed, telling the bank that you may have cooked your books doesn't make it okay.
We're not going to hear about the disclaimer clause. If you want to hear about the disclaimer clause, read my opinion again. Or for the first time, perhaps.
Nice one, Chaz. Good. To which Trump replied,
you're wrong in your opinion. He called me a fraud and didn't know anything about me.
Trump argued he's actually worth even more than he stated in the loan documents because...
I have a castle.
And golf courses, including one in Aberdeen, Scotland.
At some point, maybe in my very old age, I'll go there and do the most beautiful thing you've ever seen.
Adding...
Aberdeen is the oil capital of Europe. Very rich.
To which the judge declared...
irrelevant! Irrelevant!
To which Trump replied...
it is.
Now, this case is not going to see anyone sent to jail, and there is no evidence yet that Trump supporters care if he's a liar and a fraud. Cases next year will also look at lies that he may have told the FBI over top-secret documents he stored illegally in a toilet, and whether he tried to steal the 2020 election. And right now, they just don't seem to care about any of that either, Chaz.
Well, that was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
I like a method voice actor. Getting into it.
Well, I'll win an Oscar for that one. But we probably should note that a month ago, Rolling Stone magazine did report that Trump's PR strategy was to, quote, kick up as much dirt as possible, enrage the judge, trash some of the witnesses, and turn the process into a media circus. Check, 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 and check. So let's ignore the media circus just for a second. And note, as John said before, this trial is entirely about whether Trump intentionally overvalued his properties on purpose or not, okay? As you said, he's already been found guilty of overvaluing. if he's found guilty of intentionally overvaluing, he'll be punished more. Okay, so that's what it's about. Let's take Mar-a-Lago. It's actually valued way lower than what Trump said it was worth because Trump signed an agreement declaring he would, quote, forever extinguish their right to develop or use the property for any purpose other than club use. So, when Trump testified that intending to extinguish the right doesn't mean we will do it, it sounds very much like Trump made that valuation error on purpose to be shifty. In other words, Trump might have just effectively confessed his guilt for the purposes of this trial, and he might need to distract a lot harder if he wants to stop the judge from noticing that.
Yeah, I think the judge might have noticed that. But there was some good news this week for Donald Trump. Some swing state polls that would have sent a chill through the Democratic Party. Usually, there are only a handful of truly competitive states in an American presidential election. And sometimes the presidency can come just down to one single state, like Florida in 2000 or Ohio in 2004. In 2024, all eyes are on states that Trump won back in 2016 but lost in 2020. Wisconsin and Michigan in the upper Midwestern Rust Belt, Pennsylvania in the Northeast, Georgia in the South, Arizona in the West, and Nevada, which Trump lost both times but remains highly competitive. Well, a series of polls from Siena and the New York Times this week had President Biden leading Donald Trump in Wisconsin by just 2 points, but trailing everywhere else. Trump is up in Michigan by 5, Pennsylvania by 4, Georgia by 6, Arizona by 5, and Nevada, which, remember, Trump has never won, by a staggering 11 points. If you feed all of that into the Electoral College, where you need 270 to win, Trump has 302, Biden 236. That, Chaz, would be the ball game.
Yeah, and if you poke around under the hood of that poll, it gets so much worse. Only 2% of swing state voters describe the economy as excellent. 2%. Nearly twice as many voters said that economic issues would determine their vote compared with social issues such as abortions or guns. No surprise there. But out of all those economic voters, they favoured Trump by 60% to 32%. Young voters are always an essential part of any Democratic victory.
For sure.
Right? Back in 2020, Biden won young voters by 23 points. In this swing states poll, Biden is ahead by 1 point amongst young voters. And here's the kicker. Kamala Harris is up by 19 points amongst young people in the same poll. So is it possible that Joe Biden is uniquely vulnerable as a candidate right now? The New York Times poll would suggest that. It also found that an unnamed generic Democrat leads Trump in those same swing states right now by 8 points, whereas Biden is trailing by 5 points. And this time, back in 2019, that unnamed generic Democrat only led by 3 points, which suggests that Trump is also super vulnerable right now, just not as super vulnerable as Biden is. You know how vulnerable? Even Kamala Harris, who people are always knocking as being unelectable, is doing better in swing states right now than Biden is. She's only trailing Trump by 3 points compared to Biden's 5 points, probably aided by that support of hers amongst the young that I just described. Now, I should say there is something funny about this poll. That is that Biden won the young vote in 2020 by 23 points, right? And he's pretty much tied for the young vote now, like I just said. But in 2020, Trump won the seniors by 5 points. And now, in this poll, Trump and Biden are also tied amongst seniors. So, what are the chances that Biden gained 5 points amongst seniors at the same time as he lost 22 points amongst the young?
I guess he's got more in common with the seniors. That's the difference.
That's true. Still seems unlikely to me. And there are other polls that contradict the New York Times as well. So, this poll could be an outlier. But one element of this poll that all the other polls do agree on is that voters think that Biden's lost it. 34% of swing staters thought he was too old to be president in 2020. Now it's 71%. In 2020, 45% thought he didn't have the mental sharpness to be president. Now it's 62%. And in 2020, 39% thought he didn't have the temperament to be president. Now it's 51%, almost the same as Trump. So Trump who has the temperament of one of those bad kids in Willy Wonka, is seen as having an equally suitable temperament for the presidency as the so-called adult in the room, Joe Biden. That is not good news for Biden at all, John.
No, I guess the good news is he hasn't peaked too early. Unless this is a peak, of course. But as he says, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative, who is still, we understand, Donald Trump. We are now just under a year until presidential election day. A lot can certainly happen between now and then. It's not unusual for an incumbent president to be behind a year out and then make a comeback, but it is getting very late in the day for Democrats to try and think of a plan B. Joe Biden is running again. He's already said that. He only has one low-profile member of Congress, Dean Phillips, as a challenger for the nomination, along with lifestyle guru Marianne Williamson, and he's killing that. But those grim numbers in the head-to-heads with Donald Trump, well, they prompted political strategist and Obama campaign mastermind David Axelrod to unleash on X Twitter this week, saying that they will send tremors of doubt through the party, not bedwetting, but legitimate concern. And referring to Biden's age, he's about to turn 81, Axelrod noted his biggest liability is one thing he cannot change. Before concluding, only Joe Biden can make this decision. If he continues to run, he will be the nominee of the Democratic Party. What he needs to decide is whether that is wise, whether it is in his best interests or the country's, Chaz.
But it's probably worth noting that Biden and Axelrod do have some history.
True.
Axelrod has previously written that Biden seemed confused during debates. He was focusing on himself during presses, and he's kind of like Mr. Magoo. And when Biden's granddaughter Naomi tweeted that Axelrod was, quote, a jerk with a microphone, it caused Biden's campaign office apparently to cheer. So there is that. I don't know. Biden's clearly struggling. Kamala Harris isn't doing much better. But I just don't see how they get from those two to some other candidate without it basically sabotaging any chance that any Democrat has in the election. So to me, this is all kind of dream world stuff.
Yeah, unless Biden sees the writing on the wall and bows out, LBJ style. Certainly taking him on in the primary is not going to beat him. He has to decide. That's where Axelrod is right. There was a bit of a boost for the flagging presidential hopes of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis earlier this week with a coveted endorsement of the popular governor of Iowa, Kim Reynolds.
Someone who most importantly can win, and that person is Ron DeSantis.
Typically, Iowa governors stay neutral ahead of the influential Iowa caucuses in January. So Governor Reynolds this week openly supporting DeSantis over Donald Trump and others is a big deal. And DeSantis needs all the help he can get right now. Another Iowa poll this week had him trailing Trump by 26 points, that according to Trafalgar, with Nikki Haley third, followed distantly by Tim Scott. And DeSantis will be on home turf when at least 5 Republican presidential candidates face off in the third GOP debate in Miami tomorrow. Once again, former President Trump is expected to skip the debate. Also absent will be former Vice President Mike Pence, who ended his campaign last week. And North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. Who? Doug Burgum. He seems to have failed to have qualified. Now, to our guest this week, one of the most sought-after political operatives in conservative politics, or at least he was. Stuart Stevens ran presidential campaigns, including Mitt Romney's 2012 failed bid to unseat President Barack Obama. A staunch opponent of Donald Trump, Stevens is one of the co-founders of the Lincoln Project, which aims to sway more Republicans away from what they see as the increasingly autocratic and worryingly pro-Russian Republican Party. Stuart Stevens, welcome to Planet America.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Much appreciated.
So what do you make of these swing state polls? As somebody who opposes Donald Trump, they must be a bit of a worry to you and others.
Yeah, you know, I've worked on 5 presidential campaigns. I think there are a couple of truths here. One is that whatever we think is going to happen a year out doesn't happen, and certainly doesn't happen in the way that we think it will happen. We've never had an election like this where 70% or so of the opposing party believes that the current president of the United States is not elected legally. But I think it's very troubling as to where the country is to indicate that Donald Trump, someone who clearly tried to overthrow the peaceful transference of power, who did overthrow the peaceful transference of power, people died, could still be considered even an option for so many Americans.
You know all too well from trying to beat Barack Obama in 2012 the power of presidential incumbency. But in this situation, where we have a former president running against a current president, does Joe Biden even enjoy the power of incumbency?
It is very difficult to defeat an incumbent president. I think that the Biden administration has accomplished great things. We have incredible economic growth, almost 5%, which we never thought we'd see again. There is functional zero unemployment in America. There is huge infrastructure act that was passed, something Republicans tried to do for years and years and couldn't get done. There's been major legislation affecting healthcare, reducing the cost, say, of basic items like insulin costs. I think that the president and the administration has not done the job that it needs to do for the election in talking about these accomplishments and making sure more Americans know about them. Now, you know, in part, that's because he kind of has a day job. He's president of the United States. And Biden is very much a governing president.
So, incumbency and Biden's record to run on, but he can't escape his antiquity as well. What would your advice be right now? Should Biden be looking to get out of this race?
Well, I mean, this whole age thing is sort of bizarre in a way because he's running against a guy who, you know, is, a few years younger than him. So you have two old guys running for president. One is doing a good job as president. The other was a disastrous president and tried to overthrow the United States government. You would think that maybe that would level the playing field. But, you know, I think if you're sitting inside Biden's campaign or inside Biden's White House, you have to look back when he ran in 20 and he entered that race as a front runner and then proceeded to lose the first primaries in staggering fashion. He was written off as dead, and damn if he didn't come back and win. So once you've done that, it's very difficult to believe that you can't do it again. So I think, you know, Joe Biden's going to be the president, and Democrats should get about the business of helping him win.
And Stuart, what do you make of the Republican primary field at the moment with the debate coming up tomorrow? We've seen Ron DeSantis fading, Nikki Haley rising a bit. How do you read it?
I think that Donald Trump will be the nominee. I think that, you know, you never win these nominations smoothly. There's always a moment when it looks like you might lose. You know, if you go back to Barack Obama, he unpredictably, unexpectedly won the Iowa caucus. Everyone thought that means that he would sweep to victory in the following primary, which was in New Hampshire. And lo and behold, Hillary Clinton won. So you don't win the nomination without bumps in the road. But I think at the end of the day, none of these candidates really have an argument of why they should win other than Donald Trump. Most of the party is comfortable with Donald Trump. So I think Donald Trump will end up winning the nomination.
Stuart Stevens, good to talk to you on Planet America. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for asking me.
Last week we showed you an extraordinary attack ad by a Jewish Democratic group against Palestinian-American Representative Rashida Tlaib, a Michigan Democrat. Well, Tlaib hit back this week with an ad of her own, directed at the leader of her party, who she clearly thinks is too close to Israel.
Mr. President, the American people are not with you on this one.
Innocent civilians are going to be hurt going forward. I wish I could tell you something different. I wish that that wasn't going to happen, but it is going to happen.
We will remember in 2024.
Independent Senator Bernie Sanders, a one-time presidential rival of Joe Biden's, who caucuses with the Democrats, is now demanding Israel halt its attacks in Gaza.
Israel has a right to defend itself. But what Israel does not, in my view, have a right to do is to kill thousands and thousands of innocent men, women, and children who had nothing to do with that attack.
Although Senator Sanders has stopped short of calling for a complete ceasefire, but he wants Israel's bombing of civilian areas of Gaza brought to an end, Chaz.
Yeah, but that's the key, though, his disclaimer.
Well, I don't know how you can have a ceasefire, permanent ceasefire, with an organization like Hamas, which is dedicated to turmoil and chaos and destroying the state of Israel.
That's a big disclaimer. And there's a few of these attempts amongst Democrats to hint at restraining Israel, but at the same time leaving some wiggle room. Dick Durbin explicitly called for a ceasefire, but only with certain conditions.
Is a ceasefire needed now?
I think it is, at least in the context of both sides agreeing. For example, the release of those who have been kidnapped should be part of this, immediate release.
So he demands a ceasefire as long as the hostages are immediately released. Unfortunately, senior Hamas figures have a different deal in mind. First, Israel has to stop the bombing, they say, and then after that, they can then talk about hostages. Okay, so how does Biden thread a needle through all that? He tried to advocate for kind of a halfway house of ceasefires, calling for a pause, but only to give them time to get the prisoners out. So Biden sent Secretary of State Blinken to sell that idea to the Middle East and to Netanyahu. And how did that go, John? Did we achieve world peace?
Not exactly, at least not yet. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sees the idea of a pause as potentially handing an opportunity to Hamas to regroup. So he also wants something in return.
I made clear that we will continue full force and that Israel refuses any temporary ceasefire, which does not include the release of our hostages.
So you've got a standoff. And the protests against Biden's defence of Israel keep on coming. This is tough for Biden because even though Democrats are split on this issue, America as a whole is still solidly in Israel's camp. According to a Slingshot poll, when asked who was to blame for this violence, the terrorism of Hamas or the oppression of Palestinians by the Israelis, Americans are still solidly in Israel's corner, 60% to 11%. And even though Biden only gets 35% approval and 44% disapproval for his handling of Israel, more of the opposition to Biden's policies is from those who say Biden offers not enough support for Israel, not too much support for Israel. So how can Biden show support for Muslims while at the same time not calling for that ceasefire that Netanyahu would ignore anyway? This is what the administration tried.
I am proud to announce the Biden-Harris administration will develop our nation's first national strategy to counter Islamophobia.
An anti-Islamophobia strategy to appeal to the Muslim Democrats, but that just made some people even more angry because for years it's been Jews who have been suffering the most hate crimes, as FBI Chief Chris Wray pointed out.
The Jewish community is uniquely targeted by pretty much every terrorist organization across the spectrum. And when you look at a group that makes up 2.4% roughly of the American population, it should be jarring to everyone that that same population accounts for something like 60% of all religious-based hate crimes.
But to be fair, the administration actually began addressing anti-Semitism months ago. So it's fair enough for them to start addressing anti-Islamophobia as well. Nevertheless, the anti-Islamophobia thing is not cutting it for Biden's Muslim critics. One Muslim woman, for example, who knocked on thousands of doors for Biden in 2020 was quoted as saying she now feels like she has blood on her hands and that she's going to vote for a third party next year. Now, of course, that's just anecdotal, but at least so far, it seems like this is a circle that just can't be squared by Biden, no matter how much he tries. And of course, if Palestinian Americans were to help Trump get elected, either by voting for Trump or to just stay home, they're already getting a taste of what's in store for them. One Republican House member has proposed a bill that will stop any visas being issued for any reason to people who hold Palestinian passports. There's just a lot of losing going on right now around this issue, John, and not much winning.
No, indeed. Meanwhile, this week, the Israeli ground operation around Gaza City has continued to intensify. And as for the politics of it, in the back of Joe Biden's mind might well be the fact that he was enjoying high presidential approval ratings right up until August of 2021, when the US staged that chaotic final retreat from Afghanistan. So Joe Biden may well have a political calculation in hanging tough and with Israel, at least for now.
Now, we've already spoken about Biden's polling headaches, the economy, immigration, foreign policy. These are all issues that Biden is polling poorly in at the moment. Yet another problem area for him is crime. 49% of voters trust Republicans more to handle crime compared to 38% who trust Democrats more. And it's no surprise given this alarming new trend we've been hearing about lately: flash mob robberies.
Flash mob robberies.
Flash mob robberies. So-called flash mob thefts.
Oh, sorry, that last scary new clip was actually from 5 years ago. But I mean this kind of thing.
A disturbing and dangerous new trend, flash robberies.
YouTube is loaded with these so-called flash rob videos from around the country.
Sorry, that clip was from 12 years ago, but never mind. It's apparently a scary new trend. That's all because of Biden. And these robberies are getting so bad, they're forcing stores to close. Another symptom of America's so-called crime wave.
Crime is completely out of control in this country.
Real criminals are wreaking havoc across the country.
But is theft really that out of control? Last month, the National Retail Federation released its annual security survey, and the answer was a resounding yes! Unprecedented levels of theft! And also, no! Theft isn't actually increasing much! Both headlines about the same survey. So what's going on? Well, losses from what stores call shrink did increase by almost $20 billion from 2021 to 2022. But overall sales volume increased as well. So as a percentage of sales, shrink was pretty steady in 2022, maybe a touch higher. Similarly though, for the last 13 years, shrink has been quite stable as a percentage of sales. Also, shrink isn't just shoplifting. It covers all forms of retail loss, including staff mistakes and staff nicking stuff themselves. And if you take just the shoplifting part of shrink, one analysis found losses have increased from about 0.5% of sales in 2010 to about 0.5% of sales in 2022. Okay, so maybe retail shoplifting isn't such a big deal, but what about other crimes? After all,
people are being shot, stabbed, beaten, brutalized. It's like this evil is spreading across the country.
Listen to the judge, and there is always an alarming new trend.
And driving this crime trend is TikTok. The social media platform is brimming with Kia and Hyundai hack videos. The clips show how to hotwire the vehicles using just a USB cable.
If you see a Kia or a Hyundai and you turn around on it because it's missing plates or the headlight's out, it's going to take off on you, and more likely it's a stolen vehicle.
Wow, I never would have suspected if you see a car with a broken window, broken headlight and no license plates, that car might be stolen. Thanks, News.
Well, at least I now know what to do with all these old USB charger cables.
A new career for you, John. Anyway, the FBI just released their 2022 figures, and the crime wave might not be quite the tsunami we thought.
America's crime wave is so big, you don't need a gun. You need a life jacket. Murders have surged. Lower by 6%. But aggravated assaults have grown. Smaller by 1%. But what about violent crime, which has gone through the roof? The apartment downstairs falling by almost 2% as well. Just look at this violent crime wave. From the 90s. I mean this recent crime wave. There must be something. Aha! Kia and Hyundai thefts up 767%. Yeah, look at how out of control motor vehicle theft rates. Oh, come on! So, America, close your windows and lock your doors. The criminals are coming for your kids. I mean, Kias.
Truly disturbing stuff there, Chaz. But that's it for another trip to Planet America. More for you at the same time next week.
And don't forget the Fireside Chat this Friday on ABC News with a wrap of the Republican debate and more from Stuart Stevens from before. You'll find both shows anytime on iView, YouTube and Facebook. See you there.
Bye-bye.